portraying a man. Now this is not to be confused with someone who is cross-dressing in a role, like for example, Despina in Mozart's Così fan tutte, at one point cross-dresses like a male doctor, but that is not considered a pants role because she starts out as a girl. She is purposely cross-dressing. This is a situation where a woman is actually playing a boy.
But there are many situations where it's actually reversed, just to like confuse the audience and make it a little more difficult for the actor. Such as in Marriage of Figaro, Carabino is a pants role. It's a mezzo-soprano playing a little boy, which is me today. And just to make it more of a buffo situation, Mozart would have Carabino dressed as a girl later in the opera. Okay, so to backtrack, there are two different kinds of pants roles. There are roles that were originally written for castrati and roles that were written for women to be sung as men.
A castrato to castrati is the plural for castrato. The politically correct term back in the like 1500s was musico. It is a man who has had part of his anatomy altered before he hits puberty, so his voice would be in treble range, like how a little boy would sound. Of course, this obviously caused some serious defects when they got older. For instance, they grew to be abnormally tall, long-limbed, and their rib cages would frequently collapse because their bones weren't as dense. But on the good side of things, their voices they had a very wide range and they had very flexible voices, so it was very interesting for composers to write for that kind of voice, and it was just the aesthetic of the time. They mostly predated opera, or what we consider nowadays to be opera, but there were some minor pants roles in some Monteverdi operas, for example in L'Orfeo, which is still performed today. Speranza is played by a man, and perhaps, we aren't sure, but Eurydice, the female love interest in that show, might have also been played by a man. But they had a kind of decline in the 18th century because it's a little bit barbaric.
They originally started in the church, dating back to about 1550, was when religious music started to use castrati. As this declined, they then started to use the castrati roles and replace them with women. Basically what they had an option for, they had three options that they could do for castrati roles. They could either have a woman play the role, or they could use a countertenor, or they could drop the pitch down an octave and have it played by a male tenor. They usually would want to either use a countertenor or a woman for the role to try to keep the same color that the composer originally dictated. And so usually it's not as much of an option to drop it down an octave for a male tenor. And also, countertenors are fairly rare, so the most common option is to just have a woman play the role. And also, a lot of times, pants roles are for like prepubescent boys, and therefore the color of a woman's voice is closer to a little boy's voice than would be a full-grown man, or even a countertenor who probably sounds closer to a soprano than a mezzo does.
But as we said, nowadays there are still modern-day pants roles that are written specifically for women to play. It is not a practice to write for castrati anymore.
The last castrato, let's see, the last castrato died in 1922, which is actually quite surprising that up until the 20th century, we still had castrati around. So it's like a later practice than you would think, but now it's completely illegal to castrate men. There are still lots of surviving castrati roles, such as Handel's Ruggiero from Alcina, Gluck's Orfeo, which was revised at one point in France because the French are just completely against castration. It was revised for a male tenor, and so that was one of the circumstances where they did drop it down an octave.